how can you successfully scale your construction company? That is the question that I ask my guest today on Construction Genius, Shone Freeman. He is the president of SR Freeman, a residential custom framing company out of the Bay Area in California. And we go into some detail on what Shone has focused on over the past almost 30 years to grow his business to where it is today with over 200 employees and tens of millions of dollars in revenue on an annual basis. We talk about how he started in the field with his bags on and progressed over time into the office. And he shares some key insights that you're really going to want to listen to in terms of what he focused on as far as the sacrifices that he needed to make, the personal growth that he went through in order to scale his business, and then how he shifted his mindset from getting rewards from building work in the field, seeing a project go from nothing to something. He shifted that to getting a reward from building people. And that shift of mindset really helped him in the scaling of the business. So if you want to scale your business, today's interview is going to be extremely helpful to you. Please give us a rating or a review wherever you get your podcasts. Feel free to give me feedback via my website, ericanderton.com, or on LinkedIn. Enjoy this interview with Shone, and thank you for listening to Construction Genius.
This is Eric Anderton, and you're listening to Construction Genius, a leadership masterclass. Thomas Edison said that genius is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. If you're a construction leader, you know all about the perspiration, and this show is all about the 1% inspiration that you can add to your hard work to help you to improve your leadership. Shone, thank you for joining me here on Construction Genius.
Thanks, Eric. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
You know, you're a little bit unusual. You're out of the Bay Area, and you are a large residential framing company. What sets you apart from the typical residential framing company, do you think?
I think what sets us apart is, our size. Maybe we're not the biggest, but I think we're probably the biggest when it comes to a wood framing company that does custom projects. So we don't do multifamily, we don't do apartments or townhomes or things of that nature. We do custom homes and estates. We do just regular custom homes, and we do quite a few additions and add-ons, alterations, things like that. Everything to do with wood framing, siding, and a little bit of interior trim here and there.
And you're kind of in a sweet spot there for custom homes, being in the Bay Area in terms of opportunities for some nice opportunities with custom homes there, huh?
That's right. It's been a great area for us.
What led you, as you started the business back in 1992, what led you to choose to do custom homes as opposed to going another route?
It's a great question. Well, first of all, I loved it. I still think I'm a carpenter. So I did love carpentry. I loved everything about it. I loved framing. I started out as a general contractor. I made the detour to be a framing contractor for a few different reasons. Number one, I was starting to bid on as a general contractor a lot of the same projects that I was bidding on as a framing contractor. And I didn't really want to muddy the waters with my relationships with the general contractors. I didn't think that would be really good business, and I didn't like the conflicts that would bring. And then I thought I would have to be competing with all these guys if I was going to be a really good general contractor. And I thought that there was more of an opportunity for me in business to become a really, really good framing contractor. So that's how I chose that.
What led you to be able to take it from sort of the startup situation where maybe you're, a one guy with his bag and maybe a couple of crews and framing, one house here, one house there. What did you focus on in order to be able to scale the business to where it is today?
Well, like I said, I was pretty passionate framer. And I had some pretty passionate guys working with me. So that being said, I had some savages working with me. And so that gave me the confidence to take on more and more. So we would get custom houses, we'd knock them out, they would be awesome, and the word traveled pretty quick.
So you built the business organically, but it was also based on the fact that it wasn't just you as sort of a one-man show, but you had a good crew of guys around you who were in it with you. Is that right?
Absolutely. I've had great guys with me the entire time.
How did you build relationships with those folks? How did you establish those relationships and, get them to stick with you, so to speak?
Well, I would start off telling you, just being in the trenches and being around them, you get a good sense of who they are, and they get a great sense of who you are. But beyond that, as you transition out of the field, it's what you learn by working next to one another, that you can trust them, that you can communicate to them, that they can communicate to you, that you're gonna do what you say. You can rely on them to do the same. It's all the things that great relationships, friendships, marriages, all those things are built on those same values, those same things.
So it's interesting because you just mentioned there this idea of transitioning out of the field into more of a sort of an executive, or the classic divide in a construction company between the field and the office. What did you focus on when you began to go through that transition in terms of not getting stuck in the field, but being able to operate at a higher level and therefore scale the business? What were you focusing on in order to make that successful?
Well, that's really hard. I think that's kind of where a lot of guys have a hard time. And for me, I had a hard time because I would say you focus on everything, which really means that you do focus on it, but you're focusing on the field for 6-8 hours a day, and then you're focusing on the office side of it for 2, 3, 4 hours a day. So that makes for some long days. So a lot of people don't believe it, but I put in probably 12 or more hour days for 6 days a week for a long time, maybe like 10 years or more. So you really have to focus on both sides. So there is a huge sacrifice, and my wife made a sacrifice. My kids, when they were little, made a little sacrifice, but that's what I needed to do to get to the next level.
At what point were you able to perhaps shift that balance a little bit from both being in the field and the office to being more in the office and less in the field? When did that begin to happen?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say it was just little by little. So maybe, year by year, one day or 1 year, maybe you're out in the field 3 or 4 days a week. The next year, maybe 2, 3 days a week. The next year, maybe you're not out in the field so much except for just to check jobs. It sort of happened like that.
What were you developing your guys in a conscious way? Were you developing yourself? How did the development of the company happen? Because a lot of guys, they just get stuck in the field. They never really get to the point where they're able to scale a business. So what were your thoughts in how you scaled the business?
Yeah, I was definitely developing my guys in a really conscious way. We would do roof classes, we do layout classes, we do them on the weekends, we do them after work. All that while I was trying to develop myself as somebody who wanted to have a business succeed. While I was trying to develop them, I was trying to develop myself and teach myself stuff that I didn't even know.
What kind of stuff were you that you didn't know that you needed to teach yourself that was most important?
Oh, Eric, I used to do payroll by hand with a little, triplicate book and looking at tax tables out of booklets, so I got QuickBooks and tried to learn myself. And then I hired a bookkeeper who was way smarter than me, and she taught me a bunch, and my accountant taught me a bunch. And I read a lot of books, and I went to a lot of seminars, and it was just nonstop. It seemed like constant stuff that you have to try to immerse yourself in and learn.
So it's interesting because you started the business in the field, and then you realized that in order to grow it, you had to commit not only to working in the field, but those long additional hours of working in the office. But then that commitment to develop yourself and not being satisfied with where you're at, and understanding that there's certain things that you need to learn from an executive point of view in order to grow the business.
Yeah, like I said, I was always really I went deep into carpentry, and a lot of my guys did too. And I was really passionate about it. And I took that same sort of passion. And once I learned what I thought I needed to learn for business, and I sort of did the same with that. So whatever I could get, whatever I was really interested in, I'd talk to other people who knew more. I'd get little nuggets here and there. I'd read books. It was just it wasn't really a linear transition or a linear education, but I was enough to cobble some things together that really worked for me.
That's interesting, just that willingness to learn, though, because some people, they either think they know it all, or they're unwilling to say, hey, I've got stuff to learn. And so they just kind of muddle around as they always have,
Yeah, I mean, it felt a little like muddling to me, but when I look back on it, it wasn't so muddly. I mean, I just got what I could when I could, but I was able to put it all together. Once I got to a point where, certain duties in the office were too much for me, I got some people in that could do them and could do them way better than me. So that was big. Yeah.
So as you were growing the business from a customer service point of view, I imagine that, when you're working on custom homes, high dollar custom homes, the folks that you're interacting with, the end customer, the homeowners, can be extremely demanding. How have you handled that dynamic over the years between managing your relationships with the GCs and then also with your guys on site working with the homeowners?
Well, that's a great question. I mean, back 20 years or so ago, you would get to, have a little bit more of a relationship with the homeowners. But nowadays, with some of the houses that we build and the estates, you're really sort of separated from them by a layer or two. Maybe a general contractor, could be a construction manager. Once in a while, you get to meet them and know who they are, but a lot of times you don't. There's NDAs and all sorts of crazy stuff. That's one of the benefits, or one of the fun things that's still in play for us with doing some of the smaller jobs, is you still get to actually meet the people that you're building for. So there's nothing wrong with either way. It's just kind of keeps it a little bit more real when you actually understand who's going to be living in the house, and it's something a little bit more tangible. So yeah, back to the first part of your question, how do you deal with the contractors and maybe the expectations and your guys and how they're supposed to handle the expectations, and how you look at things from a carpenter versus what homeowner or the general contractor's unrealistic expectations are. Inside of a lot of that, I think I'd bottle that up and call it, sometimes conflict resolution, or looking at things from a different perspective. There's been a lot of that back and forth. So you have to understand how your guys see it, maybe, and then you have to have them understand how it's seen from the homeowner's point of view, or how it's seen from the general contractor's point of view. And so that they can maybe get by and not take things so personally, and learn that there's a little give and take. That's always been a big thing for me. I think if you can get one side to understand how the other side might see it, then there's more willingness to have some give and take.
Interesting. So as you're developing your guys and gals that are working for you, let's say you have someone who's really talented, but maybe there's some challenges or issues that they're having. What do you work with them on in terms of what they should focus on to grow their careers and continue to make a contribution at your company? What are some of the issues and challenges that you come across?
Communication is a big one, especially now with so many different modes of communication, right? Email, text, phone conversations, not as many as there used to be, person-to-person conversations. It seems like, there were enough barriers to good communication before, but now they're even more so, and they're exacerbated because really email and text is hardly communication. It's sometimes information transfer, but the communication a lot of times is what we're talking about.
So are you working with your guys to make sure they're getting on the phone or going out to the job site and having those face-to-face conversations?
Yeah, as much energy as I put into it, it still doesn't happen as often or as good as I would like.
Oh, that's interesting. So as you just take me back to when you started in the industry, even before you started your company, did you have a mentor or someone who kind of took you under their wing that had a big influence on you?
That's a great question. You tend to forget those, but yes, I had a bunch, and they all sort of taught me some different aspects. So I've had a really great mentor, and while he was mentoring me, it wasn't that he was purposeful in doing it, I think, but and he's since passed away last year. If I can share his name was Paul Mayhews, and he was a great mentor for me. I never really thought he was doing a lot in his business until he stepped away from his business, and then I realized exactly what he did.
What was it that he did?
He was sort of a quiet leader, and he was a rainmaker, and he kept everybody on task with what they were supposed to do. And he made it look easy because he wasn't really necessarily visibly working hard or in the office a lot. He was, sort of aging out, and so he was there sometimes, he wasn't there sometimes. But I always thought, he's got it pretty easy and all that. But after he sort of stepped away from the business, I really sort of understood a lot more what he did.
Interesting. So when you first started your business, what was your biggest struggle?
Oh, geez, there was a lot of them. Like I said, a big struggle was probably handling some of the growth, being able to assess risk, being able to, carpenters aren't the most reliable group. Being able to project a workload and a workforce to do that. While I had some great guys, I mean, you still need the fullbacks, the guys that can block and tackle, right?
Right.
So I had some good key players, but you need to always put some more good players around them. So hiring was always a tough one. There's been a number of things that I think we've kind of solved problems on, but there's still problems today. So all of those things that I struggle with, we still struggle with today, but we struggle with them in a different form or a different way.
What's the difference between the way you struggled with them then and the way you struggle with them now?
Well, I think back then there was a lot more truly skilled tradespeople to deal with, and it was more of a personality issue and more of showing them why they should stay steady with working with you. Today, there's people that are willing to stay steady with you, but the talent pool is just not as deep, and it doesn't seem like there's the workforce, but it seems like there's not quite the common sense that there used to be.
Do you think that's a function of the emphasis they're making in the school system in terms of de-emphasizing vocational trades and things like that?
I certainly think that there's some parallel there. I think there's a lot of people that can do some crazy things with computers and apps, but if you put a screwdriver in their hand, they look at you really, really puzzled.
So that would be one of the main challenges you think about growing the business in the future is the workforce issue, do you think?
I think it's a huge challenge. Yeah.
As you've grown the business and as you've been around since 92, so that's almost 30 years. How do you structure your day now to maximize your leadership impact?
Well, I calendar meeting with my key guys once a month. So I try not to stack them all up, in 1 week. So I'll see typically 2 or 3 guys per week.
How many key guys do you have?
Per month. I've got a lot of key guys, and then there's probably, I'd say, a dozen really good key guys, maybe more, but I've got another, say, 5 or 6 right behind them that we're trying to train up and mentor up. So I'm always trying to meet with those guys and talk about where they're at, talk about their challenges, talk about the opportunities, talk about their viewpoints on how to maximize the opportunities, that sort of thing.
So that's interesting. So the idea of structuring your time to spend as much time as possible or a regular amount of time with your key guys.
Yeah, absolutely. That's huge for me. And anymore, there's a rub that I'll throw in. I mean, back in the day when you're on the job site, I mean, there's nothing better than putting together a good plan, kicking ass, and building a house and watching it just erupt out of the ground like a volcano. I mean, that is a great
beautiful
feeling. And so when you transition on in the business and you're, say, bidding, or you're doing payroll, or you're making organizational charts and you're planning, you don't get that same sense of accomplishment or achievement.
Yep.
So you have to train yourself how to reward yourself for other things, right? So that's one of the things that I really like now is I like working with my guys. I like helping them see things differently. I enjoy helping them grow. It's really cool. I hope this doesn't sound corny, but I mean, I hope my guys get some skills from me that they can transfer on. They can take better care of their families by what they've done here and what they've learned here. I mean, to me, that's a big deal. So
let me explore that with you, because I think you just described there one of the great challenges that a lot of people have in scaling their business, because just that image of a building, putting together a great plan and a building just coming out of the ground, and you seeing that and feeling that sense of accomplishment, and then not getting that when you come into the office because you're doing things that are not that kind of tactile, visual thing. But you said something there that was interesting, is giving yourself another set of rewards, taking a different perspective on where you get that sense of accomplishment from. It sounds like it shifted more from the building to the people.
It did. So there's an array of, creating relationships. So if you're a carpenter and you're primal, you're physical, you're used to going to work every day, you're used to seeing things take shape by the end of the day, and you start not getting that, you need to create a reward system, right? Because you don't get that anymore. So the reward system is not so much physical based, it's more based on growth. It's one of the C's of it, right? But How do you get the growth? Well, you grow your people, you grow your relationships with clients, you grow your relationships with vendors.
See, that's fundamental right there. So the reward that you're giving yourself is not the growth of the building, it's the growth of the company. And the growth of the company is seen in the growth of your relationships with your clients, your vendors, your people, and also their growth, particularly of your people as individuals and as contributors in your organization. But it's that mindset shift that I think a lot of people struggle with again, because they're just so naturally, they take so much pleasure out of the physical building of a particular project.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, there is one thing that people ask, right? So, is a guy who's over 50 years old now. So I'm not old, but I've seen enough life, right? So guys go, well, hey, what's it like having a kid, or what's it like, the younger guys coming up, or younger gals for that matter now.
Right.
What's it like? What's it like starting a business? And I always kind of equate a business with having a kid. And what I tell people is it's a lot like having a kid having a business. If you're really interested in it, you should by all means do it. But I've seen a lot of people have a kid, and they probably shouldn't, because they don't parent well, and the kid has a lot of struggles as a result. And so the same thing is true with a business. There's a lot of people that go into business and they probably shouldn't. And so their employees suffer, their customers suffer, their families probably suffer. And so I don't think going into business is for everybody. I think if you go into business, you have to know that you're going to make sacrifices. And I think people go into it for the wrong reason, thinking, oh, I'm going to make all this money. I'm going to get to be my own boss. I get to wear sunglasses and drive around in a truck. And it's just not that. Basically, you are the guy who says, I am electing to make more sacrifices than anybody else I know.
I've pulled 3 things out of our discussion so far in light of growing a business. The first thing is this idea of sacrifice, where when you were starting off, you were not only doing 6 to 8 hours in the field, but you were doing 2 to 4 hours in the office afterwards. And you did that for 10 years. And that cost you something personally, but it helped you to establish that foundation. Did I hear that right?
Yeah, that is right.
Then the second thing is this idea of, as you were going through the process, you understood there were areas where you needed to grow in terms of your understanding of business, in terms of accounting and other areas. And so you did what you could to learn those things, but then also to hire people in who could take those things from you and do them better than you could.
Absolutely.
And then this is interesting. The third thing here, and this is the one that I haven't quite heard it in the same way that you said it, and I really like this idea of shifting your perspective on the reward that you give yourself. So from the reward of building the house to the reward of building the business or building people.
That's right.
It's very interesting. So let's say you were talking to, and you just talked about it, someone wanting to start their own business. What are 2 or 3 things that someone that's maybe struggling to scale, what would you recommend are 2 or 3 things that they should focus on in order to take their business from maybe a smaller scale to a larger scale like you've done?
Well, you got to be excellent. Okay. So you got to really care about doing excellent work. You got to care about setting up an excellent business, which really a business is it's a clearinghouse where customers and employees meet up and everybody hopefully gets their needs met. So you got to set up a good business where your employees get taken care of well and your clients get taken care of well.
I haven't heard it like that. A clearinghouse where customers and employees come together and hopefully get their needs met. But that's interesting, an interesting perspective again, because, from a business owner's perspective, you have 2 sets of customers, your employees in a certain way are your customers, as well as your actual customers.
Absolutely. Yeah. You have internal customers and external customers. That's right.
Excellent. Excellent. So I've got some real key takeaways here in terms of growing a business. I do like to ask my guests on the show a sort of a non-business question. And Shone, tell me, what's your favorite place to eat down there in the San Jose area?
My favorite place to eat, hands down, Original Joe's.
Original Joe's?
Yeah, it's old school Italian. The guys still dressed in tuxedos, that serve you. It wasn't up until probably 5 years ago that they didn't take anything other than cash. It's pretty charming in a Dean Martin kind of way.
That's classic. And what's your favorite dish at Original Joe's?
Chicken parm.
Chicken parm. Get some. All right. So Chicken Parm, and that's Original Joe's down in, where is that located? Just so we can give them a shout out.
I think it's on South First Street. Yeah, San Carlos. It's on San Carlos Street.
Okay. In San Carlos.
It's in San Jose, but it's on San Carlos Street.
Okay. San Carlos Street in San Jose, Original Joe's. Check it out. Tell them that Sean sent you for the Chicken Parm. Right on.
That's it.
I appreciate you joining me on today's show, Sean. Thanks very much.
My pleasure, Eric.
Awesome. Thank you for listening to this episode of Construction Genius. Hope you found that 1% of inspiration to help you in the next few days. If you like the show, please give us a 5-star review on iTunes, share it with other construction leaders who you think would benefit, and always remember that the show is brought to you by Kick-Ass Meetings. I've been working with construction leaders since 2004, teaching them how to run extremely effective problem-solving meetings that gets their people collaborating, taps into their creativity. And to get yourself a free copy of the Kick-Ass Meeting Report, go to www.ericanderton.com/kickassmeetings. Grab yourself that free report, read it, use it in your business. You'll find it extremely useful. And thanks again for listening.